So just a couple quick housekeeping announcements before we get started. Next slide, please. Thank you. So as a security precaution, your audio and video have been disabled. Please feel free to post questions in the Q&A function at any time. We'll have a few minutes at the end of the webinar to answer any questions you may have. Closed captioning is available in English for this webinar. You can turn on the closed captioning by either clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen or going to More and selecting closed captioning. And finally, this session is being recorded and the recording and slides will be available on the INEE website after the webinar. Next slide, please. So we have a wonderful lineup for you today. We will hear from our gender task team co-chairs, Sujata Bordoloi from Ungai. Unfortunately, Ellen wasn't able to make it today, but her colleague Amanda Mole from CARE will be joining us. And from 4 practitioners on how their organizations are supporting girls and boys to continue learning during and post-COVID-19. Of course, we know we're not yet in a post-COVID-19 world, but it's so incredibly important to ensure that return to school, even in fits and starts, is gender responsive and that we're not leaving anyone out. So we'll hear today from Loise Kamau from RefuSHE, Walter Vengesai from Padare and Enkundleni Men's Forum, Tansen Musharraf from Malala Fund, and Amal El Khatib from Plan International Jordan. So I'm very excited to pass over to Amanda. If you could go to the next slide, please. Amanda's going to give us an overview of some of the gendered challenges for returning to school for students and teachers, and is going to help us frame some of the issues that will be addressed in this webinar. Over to you, Amanda.
Thank you so much, Lauren, and it's nice to connect with everyone here. My name is Amanda Mall, and I'm the Senior Advisor for Adolescent Programming at CARE USA. Unfortunately, my teammate Ellen was caught up in other meetings today, and so I am presenting on her behalf. She is one of the co-chairs of this gender task team. For those of you who are joining today who may be new to the INEE gender task team, this team really seeks to provide a forum for all of the colleagues and professionals within this INEE network, specifically that are engaged in gender and education and emergencies, so that issues can be raised, people can work collaboratively, we can raise awareness and understanding, and really to promote visibility and advance action on gender responsive education and emergencies. This task team specifically focuses on the production of practical resources, evidence, advocacy, and strengthened knowledge sharing through webinars such as this, as well as other forums. Next slide, please. One of the ways that this forum and this task team is working on sharing information and creating opportunities for collaboration is through a webinar series. The Gender and EIE webinar series is really a space and opportunity for everyone to share experiences, promote collective action across key actors, and really to share evidence across individuals, organizations, projects, and regions. The goal is to provide opportunities for networking and coming together, and you can see at the bottom of the screen some of the objectives specifically for this series. Next slide, please. Within this specific webinar series, this is the second one. The first webinar series focused on addressing gender equity in education and emergencies during COVID-19. Various EIE actors highlighted the challenges faced by women and girls and men and boys during the pandemic and provided practical recommendations and examples of gender responsive support. Panelists also applied a gendered lens to distance learning and social and emotional learning. Sometimes you'll hear that referenced as SEL, socio-emotional learning. Today's webinar will highlight the gendered barriers in returning to school post-COVID, although we know that it's still ongoing, and share ways in which programs have adapted to overcome and address a number of these barriers. Speakers from Bangladesh, Jordan, Kenya, and Zimbabwe will showcase programs on alternative learning opportunities for out-of-school children and youth by engaging men and boys in combating gender-based violence and addressing the psychological effects of COVID-19 on learners and educators. Next slide, please. During natural disasters, conflict, and displacement, access to education presents an opportunity for marginalized girls to do a number of things. It provides them an opportunity to learn, to receive nutritious meals, participate in peer support networks, and access psychological support. So the return to education is really a return to normalcy and ongoing support for these young people. Sorry, next slide, please. Sorry, one slide, sorry, 2 slides back. I think we skipped one. There we go. Yep. At CARE specifically, we have undertaken a number of COVID-19 surveys and studies across various countries. And you see them listed there on the screen, including Afghanistan, Mali, Rwanda, and Somalia. And that really helps us to understand the gendered and other impacts of COVID-19 on CARE's education programming, including on how this will affect post-COVID return to school plans. And so that's just a little bit of the evidence that we've been collecting on this side. Next slide. A lot of the CARE COVID studies have indicated that the proportion of girls reporting, anxiety and depression has risen to really alarming levels during the pandemic. So when you look at this list of challenges for return to school, we put mental health often at the top because it's one that's that affects so many different access and exercise rights of young people. For example, in Somalia in 2019, 31% of girls reported experiencing severe anxiety or depression. That 31% rose to 62% in 2020 in terms of the proportion of girls who reported severe anxiety, and 60% of the girls reported severe depression. So that's an increase of 100% amongst the same population that we saw. Another one of the challenges that we've seen in terms of the return to school is the amount of child abuse and sexual and gender-based violence. And we've seen that increased during the time at home, increased stress on individuals. In Mali, our CARE COVID-19 study showed that amongst the girls that we interviewed, 5% saw an increase in violence in their homes, 7% reported an increase in the number of cases of early marriage, and 7% of girls indicated they are unlikely to return to school. Now that's 7% of girls is in comparison to just 1% of boys who said that they were unlikely to return to school. So we do know that there are gendered effects on this. If we also look at workload, a number of the studies that CARE conducted shows a dramatic increase in workload under the COVID-19 period. And that's further reduced time for independent study and learning. In Zambia, we saw that 86% of girls that we surveyed reported an increase in their workload just during the COVID period. We see learning loss is happening across the board, not only because of time out of school, but inconsistent schooling periods. A number of the care studies show that COVID-19 has exacerbated the factors affecting access for remote learning for adolescent girls, which include gender norms. So like we talked about earlier, workload and increased gender-based violence. And we've also seen technology-based factors limit their learning opportunities. So that includes limited access to devices, limited ICT skills amongst the young people themselves on some of these new platforms, poor network coverage, and challenges with electricity and power. And then finally, you see that there have been a number of negative coping strategies that put children's involvement in hazardous labor increasing over this period, as well as exploitative activities and or criminal activities. So these are some of the themes that we've seen within CARE's work, and I think that you will see a number of these themes also come up during the webinar today. And I will pause there and hand it back to Lauren. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda, for that really helpful framing. So now we're gonna, sorry, if you could continue sharing your screen, Symbol. So now we're going to hear from Loise Kamau about on how RefuSHE is supporting out-of-school girls in the wake of COVID. Over to you, Loise.
Thank you very much, and a warm welcome to everybody who has managed to join. My name is Loise Kamau, and I'm the Associate Director for the Girls Empowerment Program in RefuSHE. We call it the GP. And to just give a brief background of RefuSHE, we can move to the next slide, please. This is what RefuSHE does. We have 5 arms of support to refugee girls and young women who flee their countries due to war and conflict and other triggers of violence. And we run a safety and security shelter where girls are rescued through our community referrals and stakeholders referral pathways. We offer care and basic needs to the girls throughout the stay in the safe shelter. We offer economic empowerment where they're able to learn more than 1 or 2 skills, and majorly tailoring and dressmaking and fashion and design. And we also run a community support and advocacy program which targets women who are survivors of SGBV and who later become mentors and guardians and foster families to the girls in the program once they exit the safe house. And the key program that I oversee is the Education and Life Skills Department, where we focus on accelerated education for the overage girls. Mostly our girls come from DRC, Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and Somali, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. And we have seen girls who have missed out on education, and our education program focuses on giving them a chance at education again, a chance at rebuilding their lives. We don't turn them away if they're pregnant or they have small babies, and we run a daycare and provide a safe space for the children, for them to concentrate in class. Instead of taking the 8 academic years in primary school, the accelerated program runs for 3 years and they're able to sit for the national examination. And we have seen success in the program. Throughout the programming, you see an arrow talking about case management is where we support the girls when they're attending school to be able to take care of their basic needs, where they're able to buy their meals and take care of their babies without being exposed to violence and exploitation. Next slide, please. During COVID and even after COVID, when there was lockdown in Kenya, we went through many challenges, but just to mention a few and what we have been doing post-COVID, we found that the cultural experiences from the girls' backgrounds was a very big challenge, where early marriages for the girls and young women was being strongly supported by the community. And we had girls getting married and opting to run families instead of concentrating education. And we ran so many awareness creation sessions, both online, using WhatsApp and Zoom meetings with the leaders in the community to just sensitize the community on the need to balance between culture and helping girls to achieve their full potential. Also, the girls were very vulnerable to exploitation and abuse, and also exposure to survival sex. You realize RefuSHE works with unaccompanied and separated girls and young women, and them having no authority in their lives exposes them to exploitation. And also going through gender-based violence, sex and gender-based violence, and the exposure being on their own, and also even in the foster homes where girls who are underage are placed under foster families. Those were the biggest challenges that we had. And of course, the day-to-day meeting their needs was really strained, because at the program level, we offer them meals, 2 meals in a day, and the case management support gives them support to have a meal in the evening. And them being at home was a really big challenge. But what we have done to curb all this, we went virtual and introduced virtual classes, and they were able to be supported with smartphones that were loaded with data bundles, and they were able to continue with learning. And this was a new phenomenon for them, having most of them having not owned a smartphone before. And we also introduced an ICT class to reach out to girls and young women who had finished secondary school and they were not under any other support. And this was to really curb the issue of exploitation and abuse at the community level and offer a safe space for learning. And through this, they are able to get access to digital work, which has become a source of livelihoods for them, and they can be able to earn a dignified income. And out of all these experiences, we started fundraising to create an e-learning platform that will be targeting girls and young women in the community. So long as they have a smartphone and they can learn, they will be empowered on the do-it-yourself kind of skills, the cottage skills that they can use to earn a livelihood at the community level. Next slide. We have embraced integration of IT into teaching and learning, and girls and young women, as I had said, they were able to have remedial classes and catch-up classes with the teachers, and also the teachers are able to follow up on girls who have slow learning abilities and help them to catch up with the others in the class. Mental health was a very big issue during COVID, where the girls' resilience was really shaken. And we have had sessions where they've been taken through science of trauma training. And we currently want to have every girl in the program go through this training. Currently, we have 241 girls who we plan to take through the science of trauma training. And this is in an effort to address the trauma issues and help them in the healing process. Our case management program offers social support, and this is where we're trying to reach out to the girls and offer food basket and little financial assistance that they don't sink into survival sex or exploitation and other forms of abuse. We also try to look at the emerging issues of abuse cases in case, if and when it happens. And we also address issues of human rights violations by virtue of them being refugees. And we do this through our referral pathways, who have been very supportive, those who are in the legal department, those who are in child protection department, and it has been a very good working relationship. We have also continuously fundraised to grow the skills base for participants in the program so that they are able to grow their talents and also realize that they can do something outside education and earn a living. Next slide. Next slide, please. you find the program in RefuSHE is built on 3 pillars. We are right-based, we are trauma-informed, and we are girl-centered. And all this is to support programming and shape our program through experiences and develop what experiences our girls are going through every other day and the traumas they have gone through, and with a focus also on the sensitivity of what experiences they have had, and also with upholding the human rights and empowering them. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Louise. I really appreciated how girl-centered your programming was, and how interactive it is. So our next speaker is Walter Vengesai, who's going to share some examples of engaging men and boys around issues of gender equality and gender-based violence and ensuring that men and boys are allies. Over to you, Walter.
Hello, everyone. I don't know if you can see me or hear me.
Yeah, we can see and hear you well.
Oh, nice. My name is Walter Vengesai. I'm very happy and excited to be on this platform. I work for an organization called Padare, Enkundleni, Men's Forum on Gender. We are based in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe. That's where we do most of our work, but of late, we have been spreading to other African countries. We have been doing work in Kenya, Eswatini, Botswana, and also the Democratic Republic of Congo. So our organization focuses on working with men and boys around gender issues. Our vision is actually, we want to create a movement of men and boys that support gender equality. And our organization was formed as a result of a realized gap that men and boys were being left behind, especially in conversations around gender. So I've got a very short presentation, so I'll go right into it. So when discussions around gender-based violence take place, often men and boys are left behind. Initially, it was because the men and boys did not want to get involved, but now it seems most stakeholders think of engaging men and boys as an afterthought, or just engaging them as potential or actual gender-based violence perpetrators. The engagement of men and boys needs to be more purposeful and intentional. It is critical to engage them so that the information they themselves can use, and also because if capacitated, they can be allies that work to stop gender-based violence from happening. It is important to ensure that no one is left behind as our children go back to school. The men and boys need to be engaged around mostly the subject of gender-based violence, and also around the subject of sexual reproductive health and rights. We have seen that there are gaps in information with regards to young boys. Young boys are actually becoming more vulnerable because they lack information. Most organizations, most civil society organizations, mainly concentrating on giving that information to girls, and at times this is done at the exclusion of young boys. So Padare, Enkundleni Men's Forum on Gender, engages the young people in schools, and also at times we follow the young boys into the communities when they are out of school to ensure that they are gender aware. We form support groups for them that we call Padare chapters, where we put them into groups, and we work with those groups to strengthen their capacity on gender so that they can also become part of the movement as they become gender activists in their own communities and in the areas that they live. In form of services, our organization also offers gender-based violence psychosocial support, especially for the young boys, because we realize that a lot of other organizations were providing the services for women and girls, and young boys mostly had nowhere to go when they face challenges as perpetrators or as victims of gender-based violence. So COVID-19 presented challenges for a number of learners, some of whom failed to go back to school. And in our experience, some of the common cases that we've also encountered include child marriages and unplanned pregnancies. So I know our previous speakers have already touched on this. So although we do have progressive policies in such cases that should ensure that the learners stay in school, at times, in our experiences, social norms come in the way as prejudice. Educators sometimes fail to provide a conducive environment for the learners. So you can have our policies allowing pregnant children to go back to school, but the school authorities will not allow that. Sometimes, because of social norms, communities can actually take arms to fight that, so that the young learners do not go back to school. So our organization is playing a leading role in ensuring that we capacitate the communities and also the male teachers so that they become more gender responsive and more gender aware as well. So I know I'm left with one minute, so I'll go fast. I think I'm just left with one paragraph. So although the Zimbabwean curriculum goes a long way in educating learners around gender, COVID-19 has presented new challenges, and mostly to deal with these new challenges, alternative ways such as community circles, radio and TV lessons, and also the use of online platforms are being adopted. However, these are excluding other learners, mostly from disadvantaged families. And as a gender organization, we've also recognized that girls are being affected differently, as they sometimes miss lessons because of unpaid care work at home. And what we have also done is to engage the men and boys so that they can take up some of that work, so that they can reduce the time poverty for women and girls, and allow also girls to have some of the free time that is necessary for them to study and also to rest. As I close, I just want to say that our curriculum here in Zimbabwe already has content on gender, but what is needed is that we need to come up with more effective, age-appropriate ways of delivering it that captures the interest of young people. Young people may have the information, but the way it's packaged such that they may not take time to consume it. We also need to continue to strengthen the capacity of educators and school systems so that they are gender responsive. Interventions with men and boys should also be prioritized so that they are not left behind. I think I'll end here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Walter. And I think that last point is such an important one on ensuring that the work that we're doing, the resources that we're developing are accessible and and that students and teachers are able to actually interact with them and be able to understand and use that information. So thank you so much for sharing that really important intervention. Our next speaker is Tansen Musharraf from Malala Fund. So Tansen is going to walk us through some gender responsive psychosocial support interventions that took place during and post COVID-19 in Bangladesh. Over to you, Tansen.
Thank you, Lauren. Am I audible?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, thank you. Particularly, I'm going to state two of the initiatives. One is collective initiative, and other two are the individual organizational initiatives. you know that when schools reopen, mental health and psychosocial support is essential to ensure a positive, safe transition. Children and young people may feel nervous or reluctant to return to school, especially if they have been at home for several months, like 18 months in Bangladesh. Some might be worried because they were unable to learn at home and therefore aware that they may have fallen behind their peers. They may experience a stress or anxiety as well. In this transition period, caregivers play an important role in supporting children's and young people's mental health and psychosocial arena. And children and young people themselves can actively support their own well-being and support their peers too. The government of Bangladesh and its stakeholders took children's safety as their top priority before the educational institutions were reopened on September 12 to make sure that children return to and continue school with all kinds of protection against COVID-19. To drive the effort, 18 national and international development organizations launched a Safe Back to School campaign on 10th February of this year. So this is a collective effort. The Safe Back to School Alliance has been running a campaign with the government to raise awareness on behavioral change among children, ensuring that they comply with COVID-19 health advisories in schools. And also beside the countrywide awareness campaign using messaging through different channels, the Alliance members are also implementing diverse activities in more than 10,000 schools across 56 districts to promote behavioral changes in children to help them grow habits to follow the COVID-19 precautions. Along with the government, the campaign is leveraging all the available mediums of communication to create countrywide awareness on psychosocial support and to ensure safe return and safe learning environment for children in schools. The Alliance is also, the Alliance members are also implementing diverse activities with special focus on the girls and also on the schools in the remote areas. These activities include COVID-19 safety training for teachers of remote schools, distribution of masks, hand wash, hand sanitizers, education materials, thermal detectors at schools, advice on keeping schools clean, and assistance to children of the families in extreme poverty to get back to school. Advocacy with school management committees, community leaders on school safety and door-to-door campaign and courtyard meetings, particularly with the guardians to send their girls, send their daughters to school. And many of the organizations or members of the alliance are making parents and caregivers aware on preparing their children to feel safe and ready to return to school as they supported children's and young people transition to being at home during the COVID-19. And particularly parents and caregivers are also encouraged to continue the mental health and psychosocial support activities they have practiced at home during the school closure to support a smooth transition to school, returning to school. They're trained on parenting without violence activities as well. And caregivers are encouraged to share key messages to help keep children and young people safe and well at home and also in the school. And now I'm going to focus on two individual organizations programs, psychosocial programs during and just immediate after of the pandemic. Not after, we are still within the pandemic situation. So in response to the current crisis of COVID-19 in Bangladesh, BRAC, Institute of Educational Development, launched one program called Pashe Achi, beside you in Bangla. So an alternative remote learning model. Pashe Achi is a telecommunication model consisting of a counseling component and a tele-learning component, which is integrated, which integrated the psychosocial support with learning through playful approach to encourage positive engagement between caregivers and children. And particularly, they were focusing on the girls. Girls, they were providing this support, more focusing on the girls participants. And also, we can find another initiative, which is initiated by the Save the Children International. And particularly, Save the Children International has been implementing the psychosocial support activities under the Child Protection in Emergencies theme. And they have been training their staff for their well-being themselves. And also they were conducting weekly sessions, and they were conducting training for the field level staff and their partners field level staff on the psychological or psychosocial first aid. All these trainings were focusing on girls' well-being first, and also along with others. And they were using the online platforms like MS Teams, Skype, and others. And another aspect of adolescent girls groups, they were implementing, or they were having more than 30 girls-friendly spaces where the adolescent girls were being gathered, and they were particularly shared with the life skills, social emotional learning, and the psychosocial support as well. And Save the Children, BRAC, along with other organizations, they are all the members of Safe Back to School campaign as well. So all these activities are mainly focusing the or prioritizing girls' participation and girls returning to the school after the reopening. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tansen. As always, really appreciate your insights into psychosocial support. Our final speaker today is Amal El-Khatib. Amal is also going to be talking about gender responsive PSS interventions during and post-COVID, but is going to be sharing Plan Jordan's approach to PSS. Over to you, Amal.
Hi, everyone. This is Amal Khatib from Plan International Jordan. I'm the e-learning education specialist. Actually, today I'll highlight on one of our projects we call Ishraq. which means sun rays. Actually, Plan International in partnership with local organizations. Women for Culture. Sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, Amal.
Plan International in partnership with local organizations, Women for Cultural Development, NAMA in Jordan, and Himaya in Lebanon, are implementing a 3-year project funded by the European Union's European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights, EIDHR. This project integrates a multi-sectoral approach of child protection, education, livelihood to address the complex drivers of the worst form of child labor within refugees and host communities in Jordan and Lebanon. Actually, this project aimed to eliminating the worst form of child labor in the agricultural sector. We are working in Jordan Valley here and targeting 70% Jordanian, 70% other nationalities. There's Syrian, Egyptian, and many other nationalities work there in the agricultural sector. We targeting 50% female, 50% male. Our selection criteria, we are targeting working children in agriculture, out of school children, and under risk of dropout children. This project targeted as, please, yes, thank you. We are targeting 9 to 17 years old female and male, divided them in 3 groups, 6 to 9, 10 to 13, and 14 to 17. These children attended various activities. In the PSS approach, the activities is sport activities, drama, music, art, origami, and we are focusing on awareness sessions that we delivered 3 awareness sessions a week for the children. Next slide, please. Okay. How this project support the gender transformative? Let me first mention about our gender transformative approach, focus on tracking the root causes of the gender inequality and reshaping unequal gender and power relations to achieve the full realization of girls' rights and equality between all children, young people, and adults, regardless of their gender. Here I'll highlight on 2 things. The first thing is the male participation in our program. Before the face-to-face, before quarantine, let me mention our focus on before quarantine and after quarantine, because we returned to face-to-face sessions here in Jordan. After returning to face-to-face sessions, we face a challenge of participation of male in the various activities on the project, and really was one of the main challenges that we faced. As they prefer to work on farms rather than engaging in our activities to help their families and to raise some income or their income. So what the idea was to prepare and equip a tent, a portable tent, and our satellite, we call it a satellite classes. We go to them, or we reach them where they are. So the portable and equipped tents comes to reach the participants in their farms. As you can see here in pictures, the big picture is, or the large picture is for the geographical area. Here's the farm. Most of the children live in tent inside the camp, inside the farms. And here are our tents equipped with chairs, some medias, equipments, stationery, and we provide our activities on these tents. Next slide, please. Okay. During a quarantine, our activities delivered through via WhatsApp. So all the activities are implemented via WhatsApp. We generate our WhatsApp groups with 15 to 25 participants maximum. Another was one of our participants in the WhatsApp group during COVID-19. The activities were sent to the group in different forms, text messages, images, voice notes, and it was an interactive working groups. So I'm extracted some highlight points from Nada's case study. Nada first enrolled in the project because of her mother. Her mother believed that it would be allowed to her and her sister to evolve, to learn things that traditional education might not provide. So Nada said she looks forward to getting the WhatsApp notification detailing that the activities for the day is there. She was very excited to do the exercise or the activities. And Nada participates as well in the life skill for protection activities under this activity. Working children have the opportunity to learn life skills, building their self-esteem and accept their own selves. Nada, the most helpful aspects for Nada in this project was my physical changes session. We are in my physical changes sessions focus on the body change, the mental change, and the psychological changes during different period of the lifetime. And Nada said this sessions help her to explain. She said, sorry, excuse me. She said that having someone explaining her changes body and her menstrual cycle was very helpful, as it helped she not scared since she know. And as a conclusion, Nada said, Nada believes all children should know their rights and how not to be exploited and be able to protect themselves even if they force or need to work. And this was our story. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Amal. So we just have a few minutes left. I think we have time for maybe one question. So if all of the panelists could come back on video, that would be great. And Lydia is going to lead us through the Q&A section.
Thank you very much, Lauren, and thanks for our panelists. Thanks to Amanda for framing, and to Loise for talking about the alternative education, Walter for male engagement, Tansen and Amal for the gender responsive PSS. We've received a few questions. I will just ask one question on each of you can respond, anyone who's free to respond. Several initiatives have been heard about today about targeting and engaging community members. What are some of the effective ways to engage with communities and shift perspectives around girls' education? Any can respond, any one of you. Thank you. Any takers?
Hello, Lydia.
Yes, please go ahead, Walter.
I know I've shared on male involvement, but it's really one of the best approaches that is producing results for us that we are using. So social norms, especially here in Southern Africa, they are really, really important as far as perceptions on women and girls are concerned. So men as fathers and as leaders, we mostly engage them so that they change their perceptions, especially around girls' education. So for us, that has worked amazingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Walter. I will request just one more from the panel, then I'll hand over to Lauren.
Sure, I can jump in here. You know, there are a lot of strategies at CARE that we've used in terms of involving community members. So, you know, at the school level, it can include working with them through PTAs, SMCs, school shuras, you know, at mothers groups at that level. There's also a lot of work that we do around social norms change that we do with parents and community members. We have a methodology called social analysis and action that we use to address social norms, and that does include community members. And then when we're looking at accountability measures, so if it's, you know, accountability of school systems to provide certain services, it could be health, it could be, you know, a number of different areas. We have an accountability measure called the community scorecard that we use as well. So there are a lot of different strategies that we use in terms of engaging parents and community members in our work. And really, it's based on what structures already exist within communities that we can build from rather than reinventing something new or introducing something new. And really, it's looking at how can we build and strengthen what they already have. I think that's the first step. And then looking at if there's anything that we can add or complement, maybe that another community has done that they can learn from one another. Thanks.
Thank you very much for highlighting the importance of looking at their variable structures and utilizing them to engage. I will give also Loise to come in. So you can unmute and go ahead, Loise.
Thank you, Lydia. And to build on what Amanda has shared, there's really a lot of resources within the community. And what we are doing as RefuSHE, we have started to educate the girls in the program on community mapping in relation to education. What resources do they have in the community? And we want them to be aware that the community itself is a resource that can help them to achieve education. Also, the issue of helping the community to be aware through forums and peer-to-peer sessions. We have trained our girls as mentors, and we are rolling out programs in the community where they go and mobilize on their own and facilitate sessions on girl empowerment, so that it comes from a peer telling another peer, it's okay for you to be overage and still go to school. So from that point, we now look forward to engaging the community leaders, the refugee leaders, and the stakeholders at the community level, so that we build a base that is supported by the right holders and the right bearers, coming from a right-based perspective and trauma-informed. Back to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Loise, for giving a different perspective, the perspective of refugees and the need to also use rights-based programming. I'll have our last panelist respond. I'll handing over to you, Tansen. Please unmute, Tansen. You are on mute. Kindly unmute.
We still can't hear you, Tansen.
We can't hear you, Tansen. Try to unmute.
No, still no. Sorry. I think in the interest of time, we should probably hand over to Sujata, who's going to close out the meeting and give her and share her thoughts on some of the presentations that have taken place so far.
Thanks, Lauren. Tansen, you can type in the chat box. Over to you, Lauren.
Should I go ahead, Lauren?
Oh, yeah, go right ahead. Thanks.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, participants. Thank you so much for joining this very, very rich panel. My name is Sujata Bordaloy, and I work at the UN Girls Education Initiative based in New York. I'm an education specialist, and I coordinate the Global Working Group to End School-Related Gender-Based Violence. Thank you to the INE team for inviting me to offer closing remarks at this event. As a co-chair of the Gender Task Team, we've been closely involved with convening the space for practitioners such as yourselves to share your work. And thank you so much for the presentations and for the work that you're doing during this challenging pandemic. The impact of COVID-19 has been unprecedented, and we've heard it from all the panelists, the effects on social emotional learning, the education of children and young people. It has upended the lives of the most marginalized children and young people, including displaced and refugee children, with increased risks of domestic violence, child labor, early and forced marriages, sexual exploitation, violence, and unintended pregnancies. It has effectively rolled back progress on girls' education and gender equality. We've seen that the poorest and girls and boys were the hardest hit and unable to access any form of remote learning. These children, especially girls, may never return to school if we are not supporting them with accelerated learning opportunities and other services. The poorest girls disproportionately bore the burden of domestic and household responsibilities and were unable to access devices and remote learning opportunities. From early data that has come in, far more adolescent girls, an estimated 16% in Kenya, aged 15 to 19 years, failed to return to school when schools opened because of the inability to pay the fees. The outcomes on mental health has been already stressed. It's girls and LGBTQI students reported higher levels of stress, anxiety, and depression compared to boys. Early marriage and unwanted pregnancies, gender-based violence, and domestic violence were reported to have increased during school closures. All of this, it doesn't sound new, but it does sound very, very dire. And there is an unequivocal urgency to reopen schools and ensure a safe return, especially for the most marginalized girls and boys. The examples we heard in this webinar stress really highlights how critical it is that we have a multi-sectoral response, that education, social protection, child protection, and health services work together. We must work across silos and with boys and men, as well as girls and children in all their diversity, to promote gender equality. We need to act quickly and collectively to make sure that we have a range of remote learning options that are available for both boys and girls, which are low tech and offline, and take into consideration the gendered barriers that we know exist. We must reach the most marginalized students through face-to-face and personalized outreach and through social protection and cash transfers. We must ensure that teachers, parents, and caregivers are supported and provided with the tools and training to be able to play their part in return to school efforts. And lastly, and importantly, create spaces to address the health and well-being of students and teachers with attention to gender differences and needs. We need to make sure that we make available a range of gender-responsive psychosocial support and social emotional learning opportunities. As part of the 16 Days of Activism campaign, which runs from 25th of November to December 10th, Angai with partners and young feminist networks are supporting solidarity circles, safe spaces for young people to share their experiences and enable collective healing and action. We need a laser-sharp focus right now to ensure that education systems are built back equal so that children and young people of all genders truly feel safe and nurtured and are ready to learn. Thank you so much once again, and over to Lauren.
Thank you so much, Sujata. And thank you to all of our wonderful panelists today and all of the people who joined. We really appreciate all of your thoughtful questions and comments, and we will do our best to respond to them on the slides when they're posted online. Thank you so much again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. That is all for us today. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you all.
Thank you all.